In the last lesson, we have learned how to change the look and feel of our route lines, and now it's time to have a look at the global settings for our itineraries. I have opened again the project with the flight route from London to Hong Kong, and now let's select here in the route editor the rightmost icon for the global settings, and we will start as usual on the top, and here the first parameter is the calculation of the route. This is by default set to orthodrome. Don't be afraid for this strange name. The orthodrome calculation is doing what we are seeing here. It draws a straight line from the start point to the end point. The orthodrome calculation will not produce a very realistic line because it doesn't take the curvature of the Earth into account. So let's switch from orthodrome to loxodrome, and now you see what I'm meaning. This is a much more realistic version of the direct line between London and Hong Kong. Although it looks a little bit unusual and maybe a little bit strange at the first glance, but here maybe you can see it better now. This line is a direct line, but takes into account the curvature of our planet. But this problem really will be visible only in those few projects where we have those long distant routes. In all other projects, you should use the orthodrome type of calculation, and therefore this is the default one. And only in those rare situations where we need it, then we switch to loxodrome. So orthodrome is the default type of calculation, and it is perfect for 99% of our project. So before we go on with the next parameter, let's load the former project. Here we have our 3-point route with the car as a head object. So and now let's go back to the global settings, and the second parameter is the so-called progression. This is an on and off button. One click and it's turned off and on again, and this is the general on-off switch for the display of the route lines. So when we turn it off, then no route line will be visible at all. Let's turn it off and we go forward. You see, normally we would see now here the usual yellow line, and let's switch to camera view. No route line is shown. Instead, we're seeing the usual black and white dashed line. So this is the general on-off switch. And now we turn it on again. And here we have the usual yellow line. So this switch may come in handy when you have a project, for example, with several routes. And during your work on your project, you definitely would like to see the route lines to have the control over everything. And in the final stage, when everything is in place, when everything is finished, then you would like to turn the route lines off. Then you can do it here with only one mouse click. The next parameter, static width, is by default turned on. And that means that the route line here has always the same width. So let's zoom in, and you see the yellow line has always the same width. And when we turn it off, then the route line looks much wider, because now the width parameter of the definition of the line here, and I can't change it here because I have to jump back to the starting point. So here the width of 10% is taken to draw the line, and when we zoom in, the line will get wider. So this is the function of the static width parameter, and by default it is turned on. The next parameter, fade off, controls the visibility of our line progression. Let's switch to camera view, and when I go forward in our animation, until now the root line behind the car was always completely visible. And with the parameter fade off, you imagine already the line behind the car will be faded off. So let's turn it on, and we have two different types of fade off. We have a static and a continuous one. Let's start with the static one, and you see the effect directly here in the work window. A little bit of the root line behind the car is still visible, and then it is faded off, it is made transparent. And the part, how much of the line will be visible, we control with the fade off length parameter. So if I set it up to 40%, then a little bit more is visible. So this is pretty cool. And this is the start, the beginning of the animation. Here appears the line, and then it will be faded off nicely. So now let's go to the middle point, to the stop over point in the middle. And here I would like to introduce a pause time of, let's say, 5 seconds. So now we jump back to the beginning, and we go to the preview window, and we play back our animation to see what happens when the car stops at the point in the middle. The car stops, and the root line is still visible behind the car, although faded off. And I will cancel the animation. Now we go back to the fade off parameter, and now instead of on static, we select on continuous. And now directly back to the preview window, we play back the animation. Now the car stops at the point in the middle, and the line disappears, and when the car starts moving again, it appears again. This is the difference between fade off static and fade off continuous. So right now we have a pretty exact control over the visibility of our root line and how it will look like. But there are projects when during our animation, we would like to see the root or the course before us, because until now we can see only the part behind our head object, but not in front. And this is the last parameter in the design settings for the line. We have the course parameter. Actually, it is gray out because the fade off is still on. Both parameters are not compatible, so if we would like to use the course parameter, then we have to turn the fade off off. And you see, now we have it available. We turn it on, and here appears the root line before our head object in the selected color. By default, it is a gray color, and now we can move through our animation, and you see the line behind our car appears in the usual yellow tone, and the line before our car in gray. And this gray line will be visible in the final animation. Let's check it in the preview. We play it back, and here effectively we can see the part of the route that lies before our head object. This is not only a design feature, but you can use this function as well in projects where during your work you would like to see that part of the route for timing purposes, for example, or to get an overview when you are working with different routes. So when you need to see the course, then you simply turn it on, and later on when your project is finished, before exporting the final animation, you simply turn it off again. So now we have discovered all the parameters for designing our route lines, and now you are able to create your projects with route lines that look and feel exactly like you would like to have them.